Hey everyone, it's Dr. NightStare. Glad you're here. Before we get into it, hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Quick question before we start. Where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Alright, let's get settled. Get comfortable, let your body relax, and just take it easy. The engine coughed a struggling sound, then it went quiet. I tried the ignition again, but nothing happened. A sudden chill filled the car as the last residual heat dissipated. Outside, thick snow fell in relentless sheets, covering the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. The world beyond the glass was a blurring white. I pulled out my phone, lifting it high, but no signal bars appeared on the screen. My chest tightened at the empty display. I was isolated. I took a deep breath, pushing down anxiety. The fuel gauge rested on empty. I had driven too far, pushed the limits of my tank through the worsening conditions. There was no going back now. The heater had stopped working the moment the engine died, and warmth left the enclosed space, replaced by a deep cold. My fingers were already stiff, losing their feeling, and a shiver ran through my body. I needed to move, to generate heat and find shelter. Staying in the car would mean freezing to death. I opened the glove compartment, searching for anything useful. A small flashlight rested there, beside a worn road map. Neither offered immediate solutions for my dead car in this blizzard. My gaze moved to the back seat. My emergency bag sat ready. I grabbed it. Inside were several extra layers of clothing, a full thermos of coffee, and some energy bars. I pulled on a thick wool sweater over my shirt, then layered a waterproof jacket on top, ensuring the hood was accessible. My winter boots felt solid on my feet, providing necessary traction against the growing snowdrifts. I pulled a knit cap low over my ears, covering every strand of hair, then wrapped a thick scarf around my face, leaving only my eyes exposed to the harsh air. The air inside the car grew colder with each passing minute, a testament to the storm's power. I had to face the storm. I secured the car door, pulling it shut with a click against the growing roar outside. The wind howled a brutal sound as I stepped out into the blinding white. The force of the blizzard immediately pushed against me, threatening to throw me off balance. Each step was a struggle, my legs sinking into the deep snow up to my knees. The biting cold stung my exposed skin, burning it, but I focused on movement, on the need to survive. I lowered my head against the relentless wind, forcing myself to continue, to put one foot in front of the other. I moved forward into the storm's heart, hoping to find some form of shelter or help, knowing I had no other choice. The world was blinding white. My body ached, cold, numbing fingers and toes. I pressed on, my goal to escape the blizzard. Through swirling snow, a light appeared. It was hope. I stumbled towards it, legs burning, lungs screaming. The light grew stronger, a shape in the distance. A cabin. Relief washed over me. I reached the door, weathered. I raised a numb fist to knock. The door opened slowly. An old woman with kind eyes, a smile, stood there. Her face had many wrinkles, hair a white bun. "Well, hello there, dear," she said, voice clear. "Come in before you freeze." She stepped back, gesturing inside. I stumbled over the threshold, pulled the door shut against the storm. Warmth enveloped me. A fire crackled in a hearth, casting shadows on the walls. The air smelled of wood smoke, something sweet. "I am Lillian," I said, voice hoarse. "My car broke down." "Beth," the woman replied, extending a hand. "And that is my husband, Gerald." A man sat in an armchair by the fire, a book in his lap. He looked up, gaze steady, then gave a nod. He did not speak. His eyes were dark, almost black. They held an expression I could not read. He was a large man with a beard. Beth led me to a chair near the fire. "You must be cold. Let me get you something to drink." She went into a kitchen area. The cabin was furnished with tables and chairs, quilts draped over a couch. No television, no radio, no computer was visible. Oil lamps provided light. The cabin held details of an older time. Beth returned with steaming mugs. "Here, drink this. It will warm you." The liquid in the mug was amber, thick, fragrant. It smelled of cinnamon and an earthy scent. I took a sip. The taste was unusual, sweet, with a strangeness that lingered. It was not coffee or regular tea. It warmed me quickly, heat spreading through my limbs, relaxing muscles. Gerald still sat by the fire, unmoving, gaze fixed on the flames. He had not spoken since my arrival. "It is quite a storm out there," Beth said, sitting opposite me, hands clasped. "We do not get many visitors this far out, especially not in this weather." Her smile remained, but her eyes held intensity. She watched me as I drank, head tilted. The warmth from the tea, with the cabin's heat, made my eyelids heavy. Lethargy began to move over me. The quiet of the cabin, broken only by the fire, grew in Gerald's stillness. Beth continued to speak, asking about my journey, but her words seemed to drift, blurring. My focus on her face became difficult. The tea had a powerful calming effect, almost too powerful. My thoughts felt sluggish, distant. Gerald finally shifted in his chair, turning his head to look at me. His dark eyes seemed to penetrate the warmth, and for a moment unease rose. The strong welcome contained something unspoken and heavy. Gerald's silence felt like observation. The comfort of the cabin, once absolute, now held apprehension. The strong tea had dulled my senses, and I slept deeply through the night, a heavy slumber. I woke feeling the warmth of the cabin and the lingering lethargy from the strange brew. Beth smiled, offering me breakfast, and I ate the simple food she put before me. The snow still fell outside, but not as fiercely as before. Beth suggested Gerald could look at my car. Perhaps he could get it running. I agreed, trying to appear grateful for their help. A knot of tension tightened within me, but I kept my face calm. We walked through the thinning snow to my car. Gerald examined the engine, peering under the hood with a flashlight. He tried a few things, muttering to himself, but the engine remained dead. He straightened up, his breath pluming in the cold air. "I need to check the battery cables in the trunk," he said, turning to me. "Sometimes they get loose in the cold." My heart gave a quick, hard beat in my chest. I knew what he would find. I kept my expression neutral, giving a small nod. Gerald walked to the back of the car and pulled the latch. The trunk lid lifted with a soft click and a mechanical groan. The interior light flickered on, illuminating the space within. 2 large bundles lay there, wrapped tightly in dark, heavy tarpaulins. The shapes were unmistakable, human forms bundled and tied. Gerald froze, his hand still on the trunk lid. He stared, his body rigid, then slowly turned his head to look at me. His dark eyes widened, disbelief and horror clear in their depths. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "They deserved it," I said, my voice quiet, calm. The cold air did not affect my words. My husband and my best friend. They betrayed me. I stepped closer, my hand moving to the small toolkit I kept by the back wheel well. My fingers closed around the cold, heavy metal of a tire iron. Gerald took a faltering step backward, his eyes fixed on my hand, then on the weapon. A desperate sound, a choked gasp, escaped his throat. I lifted the tire iron. He tried to turn, to run, but his movement was slow, hindered by the snow. I brought the heavy iron down hard, connecting with the back of his head. A sickening thud echoed in the still morning air. Gerald crumpled to the snowy ground without a sound, his body falling beside the open trunk. A dark stain began to spread across the white snow around his head. He did not move again. I stood over him, my breath steady, my grip firm on the iron. There was no emotion in me, only a cold certainty. The witness was gone. Gerald lay still, a heavy form on the snow, the dark stain around his head growing slowly. I wiped the tire iron clean on his coat, then placed it back in my toolkit, ensuring everything was exactly as I had found it. I closed the trunk, the latch clicking shut with a final sound. The engine was still under the hood, but I knew what to do. I made a quick, final adjustment to the battery cables, connecting them with precise, firm hands. I walked to the driver's side door, opened it, and settled into the seat. I turned the key. The engine coughed once, then roared to life, a steady sound filling the interior. The heater began to blow warm air, a stark contrast to the scene I had just left. I put the car in gear. I drove away from the cabin, leaving the bloody scene and the silent man behind. The snow still fell in thick, relentless sheets, a perfect blinding curtain. It covered the tracks quickly, erasing my presence from the isolated place, the pristine white swallowing all evidence. My journey continued into the vast white world, unburdened. There was only the road ahead, a quiet determination guiding me forward through the storm, towards my next destination. I was driving alone that night. Rain streamed across the windshield, blurring the road ahead, making the highway slick and treacherous. The tires lost traction without warning, and the car veered with sudden force. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, but the vehicle slid at a high speed. The tires screeched against the wet asphalt, a desperate sound. My breath caught in my throat. The concrete barrier grew larger in my distorted view, rushing closer with terrifying speed. Time stretched, each moment expanding. I saw my reflection in the side window, a face contorted with shock and fear. I braced for the collision, my body tensing against the seatbelt, every muscle rigid. The world twisted with a brutal impact. Metal shrieked and tore, glass shattered, exploding inwards. The car began to barrel roll, tumbling end over end through the darkness, a dizzying blur of motion and noise. Every bone in my body vibrated with crushing forces. The last sensation was a wrenching jolt, a violent stop. Then consciousness dissolved, leaving only absolute emptiness. I woke slowly, disoriented by the crisp white sheets and the persistent throbbing ache that encompassed my entire body. The sterile scent of the hospital filled my nostrils. I learned the extent of my injuries, shattered bones, torn ligaments, internal trauma. The doctors offered grim prognoses regarding my future mobility, speaking of significant limitations and long-term consequences that would reshape my life. Months blurred into a grueling cycle of physical therapy and relentless rehabilitation. I pushed through searing pain during each session, enduring the agony of relearning to move every damaged limb, to stand without assistance, to take an independent step. Every muscle screamed in protest from the effort, but I persisted, fueled by an unyielding resolve to regain my previous self. My therapists watched with growing surprise as my body slowly responded, exceeding all their medical expectations. I walked again, then stronger, then further, eventually covering great distances. The near-death experience carved a new perspective into my entire being. Life, once taken for granted, now felt like a precious gift that demanded careful attention. I found deep contentment in the simplest acts. The feeling of sun on my skin, the sound of birdsong from an open window, the steady rhythm of my own breath. I embraced walking everywhere, choosing to traverse the city on foot, savoring each deliberate step, actively reconnecting with the tangible world around me in a way I never had before. I walked through my neighborhood one warm afternoon, enjoying the gentle breeze. Ahead, a young mother pushed a stroller, her small son walking beside her. The child looked up as I approached, his gaze meeting mine. His face twisted with fear. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. He pointed a trembling finger at me. His wide eyes filled with tears, fixed on my face with terror. He began to sob, a wrenching sound echoing on the street. He buried his face into his mother's leg, shaking. His mother looked down at him, then up at me, surprise and concern mixing in her expression. She bent to comfort her distraught child, trying to soothe his fear. The mother pulled her son closer, murmuring soothing words against his hair. His small body still shook with fright. He clung to her leg, his face buried deep. His sobs softened, but his eyes remained wide and fixed on something past me, a distant terror. Then, a chilling whisper escaped his lips through his shuddering breath. "He wasn't supposed to survive," the child said, his voice barely audible. The words carried a stark precision, striking me with an unexpected force. A sudden coldness enveloped my entire being. The vibrant world around me skewed, shifting on its axis. My heart beat with inexplicable dread. Every memory of the accident, of the recovery, of my newfound appreciation for life, reordered itself into a disturbing sequence. The simple fact of my existence transformed into an impossible question. I exist in this metal box now, buried deep beneath the earth. The recycled air tastes stale and metallic, a constant reminder of my confinement. He is coming for me, methodically tearing through every obstacle between us, and I remember the day this all began. It was my 25th birthday, a bright Tuesday in May. The city around me vibrated with routine energy, people rushing through their morning commutes, oblivious to the fabric of reality that was about to unravel for me. I walked along the sidewalk, feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin, headed toward my usual coffee shop. A figure stood by the brick wall near the entrance, a man I had never seen before. He wore a dark suit, impeccably tailored, and a smile that seemed to understand secrets. He did not move like other people. There was an unsettling stillness about him, an absence of typical human restlessness. "Mark," he said, his voice a smooth, unexpected resonance that cut through the city sounds. I stopped, surprised he knew my name. "I have an offer for you. 1 week of immortality." My laughter was immediate, a nervous, disbelieving sound. "Immortality? What kind of joke is this?" His smile widened, showing teeth that seemed a little too sharp. "No joke at all. For 7 days you will not die. Any injury, any affliction will simply mend. There is a catch, of course, a small one really. It will cost you your soul." The words hung in the air, heavy and absurd. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the impossible statement with the man's undeniable presence. There was an undeniable pull, a dangerous curiosity. The promise of such power, even for a limited time, felt intoxicating. I looked at his eyes then, and saw something ancient, something hungry. A part of me screamed to run, but a stronger, reckless impulse pushed me forward. "A week," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "And my soul." He nodded once. "Accept." I swallowed hard. The moment I spoke the words, a powerful energy surged through my body. It was a jolt, not painful, but utterly transformative. My senses sharpened, the world around me snapped into vivid focus, every color brighter, every sound clearer. A vibrant awareness replaced my old self, settling deep within my bones, making my entire being vibrate with a new clarity. I felt invincible, alive in a way I had never experienced. Before I could even process the sensation fully, the stranger moved. His hand, impossibly fast, shot out. Something gleamed. A cold edge pressed against my throat. I felt a searing pain, a quick, brutal separation as my blood burst forth, spraying across the brick wall behind him. My body convulsed, collapsing to the pavement. The city sounds faded as darkness claimed me. Then, just as quickly, the darkness shattered. I gasped, sucking in a lungful of air, my eyes snapping open. Sunlight poured onto my face. I stood on the same sidewalk, by the same brick wall, the familiar sounds of the city once again surrounding me. My throat was whole. No blood stained the pavement. The stranger stood before me, still smiling. The same dark suit, the same unsettling stillness. He was watching me with an amused expression, and I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that my endless nightmare had just begun. He watched me with an amused expression. A cold memory surfaced then, a vivid flash of a shining blade, the gush of my own blood, the brutal separation of life from body. I remembered the instant before the darkness, the sharp pain, the sudden cold. This was not a dream. This was a rerun, an impossible replay of my violent death. The city sounds that had once brought comfort now held a mocking quality. This was real, and he stood before me, the architect of my horrifying rebirth. Panic surged. I bolted, pushing off the sidewalk with all my strength. I ran blindly, weaving through the morning commuters, ignoring their shouts of protest. The city blurred into a frantic mosaic of motion and sound. My lungs burned, air rasping in my throat. I glanced back, expecting to see him far behind, but he was there, effortlessly matching my stride. His hand, impossibly fast, clamped onto my shoulder. A searing pain shot through my spine as he twisted, lifting me off the ground, then slamming me down onto the unforgiving pavement. My skull cracked against the concrete. Darkness swallowed me whole. The darkness shattered. I gasped, sucking in air, standing on the same sidewalk, the sunlight warming my face. He smiled. The memory of the broken skull was fresh, a phantom ache. This time I spotted a police cruiser 2 blocks away. Hope, foolish and fragile, spurred me forward. I sprinted toward it, shouting, "Help me! He's trying to kill me!" The officer, a young woman, looked up, her expression confused. Before I could explain, the stranger materialized beside me. He simply smiled at the officer. Her eyes glazed over for a moment, then she frowned at me. "Sir, calm down," she said, her voice flat. "There is no danger." The stranger's hand darted out, grabbing my wrist. He twisted, pulling me into a chokehold. The officer watched, unmoving, as my vision swam, my breath cut off. My body convulsed, then slumped. Darkness. Again, the light, the street, his smile. The accumulated deaths stacked within my mind, a horrifying catalog of endings. The broken skull, the twisted neck, the sudden blade. I stood there, rooted, refusing to engage. "I won't play your game," I said, my voice hoarse. I tried to walk past him, to simply ignore his presence. His arm extended, blocking my path. "You are already playing, Mark," he said, his voice a silken thread of amusement. He struck, a swift, brutal punch to my gut. I doubled over, gasping for air that would not come. He pressed a hand to my face, then squeezed. The world went black, my neck snapping with a wet crack. Each reset deepened the despair. Days blurred into weeks, then months, though the calendar never advanced past my birthday. The city became a stage for my torment, the people background actors in a play where I was the perpetual victim. I accumulated a library of deaths within my mind. Blunt force, sharp blades falling from heights, drowning, poison, immolation. Each memory added a layer to the growing weight on my sanity. My scream became a raw, silent thing trapped within the loop, unheard by anyone but me. He started to experiment. The quick, efficient kills gave way to prolonged agony. One time he bound me, placing me in the path of oncoming traffic, watching as vehicles struck me repeatedly. Another, He pushed me into the river and held my head beneath the water until my lungs burned and burst, then repeated the drowning process. His eyes, always so calm, now held a glint of perverse pleasure. He savored my fear, drew satisfaction from my suffering. I was a toy, a plaything in his endless game, and he enjoyed breaking me in new ways with each passing hour, refining his methods to maximize my terror and pain. My will began to fracture under the relentless torment. After countless deaths, after the taste of blood became as familiar as the morning coffee, a different kind of resolve began to form within me. I could not escape the loop. I could not fight him. His power was absolute. Running was futile. Calling for help was pointless. The only way forward was to accept the nightmare and learn its horrifying rules. I had to adapt to survive each terrible day, to understand this endless tormentor. My goal shifted from escaping death to simply enduring it, to watching him, to learning his patterns, to understanding the parameters of my eternal suffering. After countless deaths, after the taste of blood became as familiar as the morning coffee, a different kind of resolve began to form within me. I could not escape the loop. I could not fight him. His power was absolute. Running was futile. Calling for help was pointless. The only way forward was to accept the nightmare and learn its horrifying rules. I had to adapt to survive each terrible day, to understand this endless tormentor. My goal shifted from escaping death to simply enduring it, to watching him, to learning his patterns, to understanding the parameters of my eternal suffering. The world outside my own personal hell continued its relentless Tuesday morning. I lived through 1,000 variations of my death, then 10,000, then countless more. My initial terror fractured and reformed into something colder, a calculating detachment. Each death became a data point, an experiment in cause and effect. I stopped screaming. I stopped pleading. My focus narrowed to observation, to understanding the parameters of the game. I learned to watch myself die, not with fear, but with an almost academic interest. Pain registered as a sensation, not an agony that broke my spirit. My mind, stripped of its former anxieties, became a repository of strategy, cold and precise. My physical form, though resetting with each loop, became a vessel of accumulated knowledge. My hands learned to pick locks after hundreds of fumbled attempts. My eyes memorized surveillance camera blind spots across the city. My body learned to move with an economical grace born from countless failed escapes and subsequent brutal terminations. I studied anatomy from the perspective of how a body breaks, and how to avoid that breakage. I observed the stranger, his movements, his subtle tells, the patterns in his unpredictability. He varied his attacks, but his approach often held a familiar rhythm, a preference for certain methods in specific scenarios. I started to predict, to anticipate. Years passed within the loop, lifetimes compounded into a terrifying education. I learned to drive cars, then trucks, then specialized vehicles, stealing them after countless trial and error runs where I crashed and died, only to restart the Tuesday morning with another lesson learned. I taught myself basic mechanics, how to hotwire complex systems. I practiced martial arts, not for combat against the stranger, which remained impossible, but for efficient movement, for leveraging my physical form in evasive maneuvers. I learned to navigate the city's underbelly, its abandoned tunnels, its forgotten service routes. Every new skill, every piece of information, became a brick in the wall I was building against my tormentor. Impersonation became a crucial tool. I observed people, their mannerisms, their speech patterns, their identification badges. With thousands of lives to perfect the act, I could mimic a security guard, a delivery driver, a government agent. My voice adapted, my posture shifted. I learned to forge documents, to bypass digital security systems, all through repeated efforts, punctuated by gruesome deaths when I made a mistake. I developed an understanding of human psychology, learning to manipulate conversations, to extract information, to blend seamlessly into any environment. Social engineering became a refined art, a way to open doors that were otherwise impenetrable. My past self, the ordinary Mark from that fateful Tuesday, had been erased, replaced by an entity honed by endless suffering and endless learning. My ultimate goal crystallized after what felt like centuries of this existence. Not escape, for that seemed impossible, but temporary sanctuary. A place the stranger could not immediately breach. A place where I could breathe, even for a short time, away from his omnipresent shadow. I focused my efforts, dedicating every loop to gathering intelligence on secure locations. The idea of a military bunker, deep underground, presented itself as the most viable option. I began systematically infiltrating various government and defense databases, dying countless times in the process, each reset bringing me closer to the schematics, the access codes, the protocols. I spent what felt like decades assembling the pieces, accumulating enough information and skill to execute the most complex plan I had ever conceived. I would steal a high-security transport, impersonate a top-level security clearance, and access the most fortified army bunker in the region. Each step of the plan was rehearsed over hundreds of lives. The acquisition of the vehicle, the bypass of perimeter defenses, the navigation through layers of biometric and digital locks, the final entry into the underground facility. Every interaction, every code, every potential obstacle was cataloged and solved. Then, on one Tuesday, after what felt like a million Mondays, I executed the plan. I woke on the sidewalk, observed the stranger, then moved. My actions were precise, a choreographed dance perfected over untold repetitions. I bypassed the initial patrols, acquired the necessary transport, and drove it through the night. My fabricated credentials opened every gate, every door. I navigated the labyrinthine corridors, my mind a map of the facility, until I stood before the final blast door. My fingers, steady and practiced, entered the complex sequence. The heavy metal groaned open, revealing a sealed environment, an airlock. I stepped inside, the door hissing shut behind me. I cycled through the airlock, my senses alert for any sign of him. The inner door opened, revealing a secure command center, empty and silent. Thick concrete walls, meters deep, surrounded me. Layers of hardened steel and advanced defenses separated me from the outside world. I had done it. I had reached a place that, for a precious moment, felt utterly inviolable. I walked to the main console, activated the external cameras, and watched the static image of the world above. A sense of weary triumph settled over me, a sensation I had not felt in untold ages. Here, deep beneath the earth, I believed I had found temporary refuge. The static image on the main console flickered, then resolved into a chaotic scene from the army base above. Smoke billowed from a distant barracks, black plumes rising into the clear morning sky. Soldiers moved with frantic urgency, some falling, others firing wildly at nothing visible on the screen. The perimeter fences had been torn apart, guard towers toppled, their twisted metal structures lying broken on the ground. Vehicles burned, their tires melting into puddles of rubber. The air, even through the monitor's filter, seemed to vibrate with destruction. Then he appeared. He moved through the devastation with impossible grace, a dark figure against the backdrop of ruin. He walked past a fallen soldier, not bothering to look down, his path unerring. Another soldier, clearly terrified, raised a weapon, firing a useless burst that tore into the ground. The stranger simply reached out, his hand closing around the soldier's neck. There was no struggle, only a quick, final snap. He dropped the body, then continued forward. He was not rushing, he was methodical, a predator enjoying the hunt. He systematically dismantled the base's defenses, moving from checkpoint to checkpoint, each one falling with precise determination. I watched as alarms blared, as explosions rocked distant buildings, as the desperate shouts of men echoed across the feed. Each death was a calculated step towards my position. He was not merely breaking in, he was clearing a path, enjoying the process. He paused at a fortified entrance, observing a group of soldiers desperately trying to reinforce it. Instead of forcing his way through, he simply ripped a communication antenna from a nearby tower, then used it as a crude spear, impaling one soldier after another through the reinforced door itself, their desperate cries silenced with sickening efficiency. There was no rage in his movements, only a cold, efficient determination that spoke of great malice. He was not just killing, he was demonstrating, asserting his absolute power with every brutal act. He wanted me to see it all. I pressed a button on the console, activating the intercom, my voice resonating with a cold defiance I had cultivated over lifetimes. "You cannot reach me here," I said, my words echoing in the secure room. "You have played your game long enough." The stranger stopped in the feed, turning his head slightly towards the camera. He raised a hand, as if casually adjusting an invisible earpiece. A ripple of something unexpected crossed his face. He began to laugh. It was not a chuckle or a cruel sneer. His laughter started as a low, guttural sound, then quickly swelled, filling the speaker with unrestrained joy. His head tilted back slightly, his eyes closing for a moment as pure mirth consumed him. It was rapturous, a sound that spoke of complete delight, of finding the pinnacle of satisfaction. His entire body shook with the force of it. His face, usually so impassive, was alight with terrifying happiness. His teeth, gleaming white, were visible in a wide, genuine smile. This was the laughter of true, unburdened pleasure. He was not pretending. He was genuinely overjoyed. "Mark," he finally said, his voice still laced with lingering amusement, "it's only a matter of time." He opened his eyes, now wide and sparkling with terrifying eagerness. He looked directly into the camera, into my eyes, and I saw a truth that stopped my heart. This was not about immortality, or a soul, or a test. This was about the thrill of the chase, the meticulous breaking of a spirit. I was not a victim. I was his ultimate plaything, a pawn in a game he cherished above all else. His pursuit was not a means to an end, it was the entire point. His joy was real, terrifying in its purity. He loved this. He loved this. He loved Miki being caught in this cycle of fear and death, forever escaping, forever learning, forever leading him on. A high-pitched whine started then, cutting through the quiet of the bunker. It was a piercing, metallic shriek that vibrated through the very foundation of the earth. The sound grew louder, steadier, an unmistakable drilling noise. It was coming from above, burrowing through the layers of concrete and steel. He was not just clearing a path, he was already here. The sound was directly overhead, relentless and growing. Corey picked the lock on Micah's bedroom door with a hairpin, the click echoing loud in the quiet house. We slipped inside, the air cool around us. I remembered Micah's laugh in this room, a sound now gone forever. We searched for answers about her death, touching her things gently, hoping for a clue. Corey moved to the closet, pulling a white shoebox from the top shelf. The word "murders" was written in black marker across the lid. My stomach tightened. Corey tore the tape, lifted the lid, and we both looked inside. A lock of dark hair lay on a yellowed photograph of a girl I did not recognize. Next to it sat a small wooden bird carved crudely, a metal tooth embedded in its eye. My breath caught in my throat. This box held proof. Micah was a killer. Corey gripped the shoebox as if it might burn her hands, and we fled Micah's room, past the vacant living room, and out the front door. The cool evening air offered no comfort, only another layer of dread. We piled into Corey's car, the engine starting with a jolt. She drove, her focus fixed on the road, while the weight of the box in my lap grew heavier with every mile towards the police station. My mind raced with the images from inside the shoebox, the hair, the bird, the horrifying implication of it all. I needed an explanation beyond Micah being a monster. I needed a different answer, so I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers clumsy with panic. My mother answered on the second ring, her voice tight. "Janie, where are you? Are you all right?" "Mom, I found something at Micah's house," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Something terrible." It was a box, and it had proof she did horrible things. There was no sound on the other end of the line for a long moment, a moment that stretched into an eternity. Then my mother's voice came back, strained and low. "We knew, Janie," she said, her words hitting me like a physical blow. "All of us parents knew about Micah's problems for years, and we have been trying to keep everything quiet." The car swerved slightly as Corey gasped, having heard the confession through my phone. The world outside the window blurred, and the horrific truth began to settle in my mind. Not only was Micah a killer, but our own parents had known, and they had actively hidden her monstrous acts. The mystery deepened into a terrifying abyss. The police station entrance was a sterile box of white walls and fluorescent lights. Corey held the shoebox tight, and we walked into the lobby. My parents sat on a hard bench across the room, their wrists bound with shining metal, their faces empty. Corey's mother and father sat beside them, their gazes fixed on the floor, and a cold dread settled deep inside me. A man in a dark blue uniform approached us then, his expression firm. "Janie, Corey?" he said, his voice calm. "I am Officer Paul." He gestured towards a small, quiet room away from the waiting area, and we followed him, the shoebox still clutched in Corey's hand. Officer Paul closed the door behind us, and the silence in the room felt heavy and real. "Your parents are here because they came forward earlier today," Officer Paul explained, his gaze moving between us. "They provided us with information, evidence about a series of killings, not just Micah's death." My mind struggled to process his words, feeling disconnected from the world. "Micah's death," Officer Paul continued, "was not a suicide. It was a meticulously staged event designed to look like one, a careful deception. Your parents are being processed as accessories in a broader pattern of murders." The world tilted. Everything I thought I knew collapsing around me, and the gruesome contents of the shoebox suddenly felt less incriminating for Micah and more terrifying for everyone else. 4 months drifted by, and the initial wave of commotion finally subsided. My parents and Corey's parents served their time, a short sentence for their complicity, for their failed attempt at silence. They were released last week, their faces etched with relief and a strange kind of exhaustion. Corey and I watched them walk free, our own faces carefully blank, hiding the secret that still settled beneath our skin. The shoebox, that supposed evidence of Micah's monstrous acts, now sat tucked away in a safe place, a keepsake rather than proof of another's guilt. Micah was never the killer they imagined. not solely. She was a partner, a willing participant in our quiet pact. She understood the thrill, the precise artistry of control, the way life could be shaped and ended. We worked together, the three of us, for years, creating our own dark narratives, leaving trails only we could follow. Her suicide was a final act of devotion, a meticulously constructed illusion we designed, a finely executed plan that secured our freedom. The authorities, blinded by the manufactured evidence and our parents' confessions, saw what we wanted them to see. They saw the parents covering for a troubled girl, an isolated killer driven to take her own life. They pieced together a story, a comforting narrative that fit their world. They believed our sorrow, our shock, our staged fear. We watched them close the cases one by one, sealing the truth away with official reports and legal jargon. Corey smiles sometimes when we remember the details, a subtle twist of her lips. We are unburdened, free to continue our work, unchained by suspicion, the real architects of the terror they thought they had contained. The hunt for true answers ended the moment they believed our carefully woven lie. The house contained every aspect of my father's existence, each item placed without reason or order. Piles of things covered every surface. Dusty stacks of newspapers formed precarious towers in the hallway, and the floorboards groaned under the weight of accumulated boxes. Our small rooms felt perpetually full, leaving little space for free movement. My father moved through this maze with a careful tread. He spoke few words, his presence a constant watchful weight, and his eyes never met mine for long periods. We rarely ate meals together at the chipped kitchen table. A heavy padlock secured the refrigerator door, a shiny brass statement of scarcity. I learned early not to approach the fridge without specific permission, and permission came only for the smallest portions of food, given with a silent gesture. Another absolute rule dictated no unexpected visitors ever crossed our threshold. The sound of someone knocking on the front door instantly brought a hushed panic, a desperate scramble to pretend we did not exist inside. We would hold our breath until the footsteps faded away. Most significant were the black garbage bags. They stood in corners of every room, leaning against walls, filling vacant spaces under windows and beside door frames. Some bags were small, barely containing anything. Others bulged with unseen contents tied with coarse string. My father never allowed me to touch them. He never spoke about what they contained, and I never asked. My imagination filled the dark plastic with unimaginable things, broken bones, moldy food, perhaps even parts of people. Everything inside them terrified me. Touching them was absolutely forbidden. I accepted their presence as an immutable aspect of our house, a fundamental truth that required no explanation. I simply obeyed. The call came in the night. My father died. I returned to the house, an older version of myself, but the house remained unchanged. Its silent rooms held the same accumulated clutter, the same looming stacks, the same dull light filtering through grime-coated windows. The air itself seemed heavy with the years, a weight of continued stasis. No one watched me now. The padlock still secured the refrigerator, its brass cold under my touch, but no one forbade me to open it. I did not, the habit too deeply ingrained. My eyes found the black bags first. They stood where they always had, silent and still in their familiar places. A tremor went through me. An old echo of dread, but it quickly faded. This was my house now. There was no one to stop me. I walked to the largest bag leaning in the hallway, its plastic surface dull and dusty. My fingers, surprisingly steady, untied the coarse string at its neck. I pulled open the top. Inside lay crumpled newspapers, empty tin cans, and broken plastic containers. No horror, No secrets, only the ordinary refuse of daily life, long abandoned. I moved from bag to bag, a methodical pilgrimage through the house. Each one yielded a similar collection: yellowed magazines, tattered clothes, empty food wrappers, discarded packaging materials. One bag held only old, broken toys I vaguely remembered from my early childhood. Another contained a collection of dead batteries and tangled electrical wires. The mystery that had fueled years of fearful speculation dissolved with each open bag. There was no dark secret hidden within the plastic. The bags contained only rubbish, accumulated waste without malice or deeper meaning. The true enigma was not what lay inside them, but the rules themselves, the unspoken fear they instilled, and why my father had kept everything. The small brass lock on my kitchen cabinet was barely visible. I kept it shut most days, a small brass disc securing a space I rarely used. One evening, a friend visited my apartment. She looked at the cabinet. "Why the lock?" she asked, her voice simply curious. I turned towards the cabinet, really seeing the small padlock for the first time in many years. Its brass surface caught the kitchen light. It mirrored the exact padlock that had secured my father's refrigerator. I had bought this lock years ago without thinking, affixing it to this particular cabinet. I had not consciously registered its presence since then. A sudden heat rose into my cheeks. I walked to the cabinet. My hands moved to the small key. I inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The mechanism clicked open with a soft sound. I unfastened the lock and pulled the cabinet door wide. Inside lay a collection of old receipts, a few dried-up pens, and some loose buttons. There was nothing valuable within. No important items were kept there. Only ordinary objects, accumulated without particular reason, stored behind a silent barrier. I pulled every item out of the cabinet and dropped it into the kitchen trash. The cabinet was now completely empty, a clean, open space. I stood there for a long moment, the small brass lock still in my palm. It was a tangible object from my past, a silent witness to ingrained rules. I did not discard it. I walked to my desk and placed the lock into a small drawer. Its solid weight felt real against my fingers. I understood that fully breaking free from old habits required time. The fear of scarcity, the constant need for rigid control, the unspoken rules that had governed my childhood home, they did not vanish quickly. They slowly receded. But they left indelible marks behind. I had opened the black bags. I had emptied the cabinet. The lock remained, a quiet reminder. The van smelled of stale beer and cheap cologne, a new kind of freedom I was trying to wear. Tim, my boyfriend, yelled something over the blast of his band's demo, his hand finding my leg. I squeezed his knee and smiled, a practiced movement I hoped looked natural. This was the new me, the one who didn't flinch at the chaos. The one who belonged in this rolling metal box speeding toward a remote field and a concert under the stars. Cans clinked and bottles rattled. Brian, behind the wheel, took another pull from a brown bottle, his eyes fixed on the darkening two-lane road ahead. His head bobbed with the bass line, a loose rhythmic motion that felt just a little too disconnected from the actual steering. A cloud of sweet, pungent smoke filled the space from the back seats where Maya and Jake passed a joint. Their laughter was loud and easy, mingling with the distorted guitar riffs. Everyone moved to the music, a collective pulse of young energy. They were all so completely in it, lost to the moment, vibrating with a desperate kind of joy that I watched with a quiet part of myself. Brian let out a whoop when the van hit a bump, sending a spray of cheap beer across the dashboard. He laughed, a raw, joyous sound, and gave the wheel a playful twitch. The van swayed, recovering its line a moment later, and no one else seemed to notice. My stomach tightened. I glanced at Brian's profile, his jaw set, his gaze still on the disappearing road, but his grip on the wheel seemed too relaxed. The speedometer needle hovered above 90. The light from the setting sun slanted through the grimy windows, painting streaks of orange across the dust-streaked interior. Every mile deepened the sense of leaving everything else behind, pushing further into this wild, unrestrained night. I leaned my head against the vibrating glass, feeling the engine's power beneath me, a relentless force carrying us all forward. The road curved and Brian's foot pressed harder on the accelerator. The van picked up speed, the tires whined against the asphalt. He sang along, off-key, oblivious to the increasing sway, a single hand now steering, the other waving rhythmically. He gripped the bottle again, tipping it back, then slammed it down onto the console. The van swerved slightly, a subtle shift that sent a cold prickle up my spine. The others cheered louder, mistaking the carelessness for excitement, fully immersed in their own defiant roar. I watched the roadside trees blur, a dark, unbroken wall rushing past. The trees became a blur as the world pitched sideways with a violent lurch. Brian yelled a curse. The van peeled from the asphalt, its tires screaming their protest as we left the road. It tilted, then tumbled down the steep embankment. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. My body slammed against the seatbelt, then against hard surfaces, a series of relentless impacts. Air filled with the acrid smell of burning rubber and gasoline. I heard a choked gasp, a sickening crunch, then Tim's guttural cry. The van spun, then rolled, a deafening crash as it came to rest. A sharp pain pulsed through my head. The roar of impact stopped. The absence of sound was absolute. A dull ache was the only feeling. My ears rang with a high-pitched whine. I blinked, trying to clear the haze from my vision. The world came into focus. I was upside down, trapped by the seatbelt, my head throbbing. I pushed against the crushed roof, feeling a sharp pain in my ribs. Blood trickled down my temple. The van lay a mangled wreck, metal twisted and glass shattered everywhere. Tim was slumped forward in his seat, his head at an unnatural angle. His chest was still. Maya was twisted between the front seats, her eyes open, staring at nothing. Jake lay half out of the back door, a heavy silence around him. A groan broke the awful quiet. Brian. He was stirring, struggling to push himself up from the driver's side. His face was streaked with dirt and blood. His eyes met mine, wide and panicked. "Help me," I croaked, my voice raw. He scrambled over the wreckage, his movements stiff. He unbuckled his own seatbelt and pulled himself free. He reached for me, his hand grasping my shoulder. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough. He fumbled with my seatbelt buckle. It clicked open. I fell onto the floor, a fresh wave of pain washing over me. He knelt beside me, his breath ragged. He looked around the interior, his gaze lingering on the still bodies. A strange change came over his expression. His eyes hardened. He grabbed my arm, pulling me roughly toward the driver's seat. "You were driving," he stated, his voice flat. "No, I wasn't." I tried to struggle. He slammed my head against the dashboard. The world spun. He hit me again, a hard blow to my stomach. I gasped, unable to breathe. He dragged my limp body into the driver's seat, forcing my hands onto the steering wheel. He wiped blood from his own face onto my shirt. He pulled a broken bottle from the floor and placed it in my hand, then let it drop. He pushed my fingers around the wheel, leaving his own prints over mine. "This is on you," he snarled. He stood up, looking over the wrecked van one last time. He glanced at me, lying half-conscious against the steering wheel. He turned and stumbled toward the dark tree line. He disappeared into the trees without a backward glance. I watched him go, my body aching. my mind struggling to comprehend. The darkness swallowed him whole. The throbbing behind my eyes pushed at the edges of my vision. Brian's form receded into the dark wall of trees, dissolving into the night. I tried to move my fingers around the steering wheel, but they had no feeling. The metal of the wheel pressed against my numb palms. The broken bottle lay on the seat beside my thigh. He had left me here, fatally injured, framed for everything. No one would ever find me in this mangled wreck, hidden deep in the wilderness. No one would learn what Brian had done. A shallow breath caught in my throat, a fading sound. The last light in the world flickered, then went out. Only the dark remained. I woke early and went to our room. Sunlight entered through the window. My love lay still in the bed. I leaned over him and brushed my lips against his forehead. His skin felt cool. "Good morning, my dear," I whispered. He did not respond. I did not expect him to answer. This was our morning ritual. I pulled back the blankets, careful not to disturb his position, and began to clean him. He needed fresh clothes every day. I spoke to him about the weather outside and the birds singing in the garden. He always listened. I combed his dark hair and arranged it just so. His eyes remained closed. I knew he was comfortable. I placed a kiss on his cheek again before dressing him in a clean shirt. Outside, a shrill voice cut through the air. Mrs. Henderson again. "Anna, are you home?" she shouted. I ignored her. She always made such a racket. The front door rattled. She pounded on the wood. "There is a terrible smell coming from your house," she screamed. "The whole street is talking." I heard other voices joining in, low murmurs becoming louder. They spoke of strange noises late at night. I simply closed our window to block them out. My love deserved peace. He just needed to rest. Their complaints meant nothing. I picked up his hand and held it. His fingers were stiff, but I loved their feel. The world outside could wait. I had my love. The shouting outside grew into a continuous clamor. I heard them discussing the smell again, their voices filled with anger. I pulled the curtain across our window, wanting to keep their negativity from our space. A sharp rap sounded at the front door. I knew this knock was not Mrs. Henderson's frantic pounding. This knock held a different weight, a firm authority. A man's voice spoke, clear and stern, demanding I open the door. I did not move from my love's side. He needed me here. Another voice joined the first, deeper. They stated they were police officers. They said they had received multiple complaints. They spoke of a welfare check. I tightened my grip on my love's hand. His skin felt cool beneath my palm. "They are trying to disturb us, my dear," I whispered to him, my voice low. "They do not understand our peace." The knocking continued, growing more insistent, resonating through the entire house. Then the man's voice again, louder this time. He said they would be forced to enter if I did not comply. I knew what that meant. They meant to come inside. They meant to take my love from me. I leaned over him, pressing my ear against his chest, listening for the faint rise and fall I always imagined. "Please, my dear," I urged him. "You must wake up, just for a moment. Show them you are here with me." I stroked his cheek, hoping to coax him awake. His eyes remained closed, his face still. A splintering sound ripped through the quiet of our home. The front door shuddered against its frame. I heard wood crack. They were forcing their way in. I would not let them reach him. I positioned myself in front of the bed, my back to my love, ready to shield him. Another loud snap, then the sudden crash of the door as it gave way. The harsh light of the morning streamed into the hallway. Footsteps thudded on the wooden floor. I heard several men speaking as they entered my home. The men in uniforms entered our room. Their eyes immediately went to the bed, to my love. I stood firm, blocking them as best I could. The taller officer stepped forward, his face contorting. He stopped short, one hand going to his nose, his eyes wide. He looked at me, then back at my love. I saw understanding dawn in his gaze, a terrible realization. Another officer came up beside him, his expression quickly mirroring the first. They saw my love was gone. They saw what I refused to see. "Ma'am, step away from the bed," the first officer commanded, his voice strained. I did not move. He reached for my arm. I recoiled, shielding my love. "He is only sleeping," I told them, my voice firm. "You must not disturb him." The second officer pulled out a device. He spoke into it, his words clipped. "We have a deceased male. Appears to have been here for some time. Suspect is uncooperative." His eyes swept over the room, then landed on me. He took out restraints. They moved towards me with purpose. I knew they meant to take him. I knew they meant to separate us forever. My heart pounded against my ribs. "No," I cried, my voice rising. "You cannot touch him. He is mine." I turned back to my love, pressing my hands onto his chest, begging him. "My love, please, wake up for me now. Show them." I whispered words of desperate longing. Then a sound came from the bed. A low, guttural exhalation escaped his lips. The officers froze. Their eyes widened, fixed on my love. His eyelids fluttered, slow and heavy, then opened a fraction. A dull, milky glaze showed in his eyes. His head turned on the pillow, a dry, rasping sound accompanying the movement. A slow, agonizing twitch went through his left arm. It lifted, stiff and unnatural, bending at the elbow with a creak. His fingers, rigid before, curled slowly, a macabre invitation. A collective gasp left the officers. They stumbled back, their faces ashen. One dropped his device. The air filled with their terror. My love's lips parted, revealing yellowed teeth, and a wet, sickening gurgle came from his throat. He pushed himself upwards, cadaverous, his movements jerky and disjointed. His vacant gaze found mine. A cold triumph filled me. He heard me. He answered me. He was here for me. My twisted desire was granted. I was driving on a long, dark stretch of highway. Rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the world beyond my headlights. The wipers struggled to keep pace with the deluge. My tires gripped the wet asphalt, a steady, rhythmic contact. Then the steering wheel wrenched hard in my hands. The car veered sharply to the right. My foot instinctively slammed the brake pedal, but the vehicle slid, unresponsive to my efforts. Panic seized me, a cold grip on my chest. I fought the wheel, pulling and twisting, trying to regain control. The car veered, its engine roaring in protest, out of my command. It swerved across the lane, the guardrail rushing closer with speed. Time stretched, each second an agonizing eternity. I saw the concrete barrier loom, a solid, unforgiving wall. The impact was deafening, a shattering explosion of metal and glass that ripped through the night. My body lurched forward against the seatbelt, then snapped back against the headrest. The world dissolved into a chaotic tumble. The car spun, rolling over and over, end to end. I heard tearing metal, shattering glass, and the sickening screech of rubber. My head struck something hard, pain blooming behind my eyes. A flash of searing heat. Disorientation overwhelmed me. I was suspended upside down, then crushed against the door, then flung hard again as the vehicle continued its destructive roll. The motion finally stopped with a jarring thud, followed by a strange, unnatural quiet. Then sounds flooded back, dripping water, groaning metal, my own ragged breathing. I tasted blood, metallic and warm, coating my tongue. My body screamed with pain, every nerve alight. I tried to move my arm, but a crushing weight held it pinned. My vision blurred, edges darkening. Red and blue lights flashed through the mangled wreckage, painting streaks across my sight. Voices shouted, urgent and distant. A hand touched my face, cold against my clammy skin. "Stay with us," someone commanded, their voice cutting through the ringing in my ears. I felt pressure on my chest, a rhythmic push. My eyes closed, struggling to open again. The voices receded, fading into a buzzing echo. The world dimmed around me. I fought to hold on, but consciousness slipped away, a slow descent into a terrifying darkness. I opened my eyes to a world of white. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled my nostrils. Pain, a constant, dull throb, pulsed through every part of my body. My head felt heavy, wrapped tightly in bandages. I tried to move, but my limbs protested, locked in place by casts and tubes. A nurse noticed my stirring, her face appearing above me with a practiced smile. She spoke gently, her voice a calm anchor in my confusion, telling me I had survived a terrible accident. The days blurred into weeks within the hospital walls. Doctors visited, their faces etched with concern as they discussed my injuries. My left leg was shattered, bone fragments piecing together through surgical pins. My jaw was wired shut, my cheekbone fractured, making every attempt to speak a struggle. The real challenge lay in my spine, a debilitating injury that cast a long shadow over my future. They spoke of extensive nerve damage, of uncertain outcomes. Their words carried a heavy weight, suggesting a life drastically different from the one I had known. Doubt was a tangible presence in their conversations. A deep frustration simmered within me. I refused to accept their grim prognosis. The thought of permanent disability fueled a fierce determination. I pushed through the excruciating sessions of physical therapy, forcing my aching muscles to respond, gritting my teeth against the fire in my nerves. Every small movement felt like a monumental victory. Learning to sit up, then stand, then take a single, trembling step became my entire existence. My body screamed in protest, but my will refused to yield. Months crawled by, a relentless cycle of pain and progress. Slowly, painstakingly, my strength returned. With each recovered inch of movement, a powerful realization grew within me. I had been given a second chance, a life snatched from the brink. This suffering, this hard-won recovery, instilled in me an overwhelming appreciation for simply existing. Breathing, seeing the sunlight, feeling the ground beneath my feet. These were no longer mundane acts, but precious gifts. I left the hospital different, inside and out. The scars on my body were a testament to my fight, but my spirit felt lighter, freer. The first thing I did upon discharge was walk. I walked to the park, to the store, around my neighborhood. My legs, once broken and unresponsive, now carried me with a joyful purpose. Each stride was an affirmation, a celebration of life. I embraced walking everywhere, feeling the pavement beneath my shoes, the air on my face. It was my way of owning my recovery, a symbol of resilience that allowed me to believe the past was truly behind me. The afternoon sun was warm on my skin, a pleasant contrast to the cool breeze. I walked along the familiar sidewalk, the crunch of my shoes on the pavement a comforting sound. The corner store, with its brightly colored awning, was just 2 blocks away. My strides were even, my body moving with a freedom I still relished. I passed tended gardens, the scent of blooming flowers drifting through the air. Life felt simple, good, a gift I cherished with every breath. As I rounded the next block, I saw a young woman pushing a stroller. A small boy, no older than 5, walked beside her holding her hand. He had bright eyes. They took in the world around him with curiosity. I offered a small smile as we approached each other. The woman returned it, a gentle gesture. The boy, however, stopped. He released his mother's hand. His gaze fixed on me. His eyes widened, changing into something else entirely. Pure horror flooded his small face. His mouth fell open. He took a staggering step backward, stumbling against his mother's leg. His breath hitched, a gasp catching in his throat. He just stared, his eyes wide and tear-filled, fixed on my face. A small hand lifted and trembled. He pointed at me. His mother looked down at him, concerned. She tried to pull him forward, but he stood rooted to the spot. A whimper escaped his lips. Then the whimper grew into a choked sob. He began to cry, a desperate sound that tore through the peaceful afternoon. He covered his face with both hands, burying it against his mother's side, shaking. His sobs intensified, a raw outpouring of terror. The mother looked at me, her expression shifting from confusion to bewilderment, then to an almost accusatory concern. I stood there, rooted myself, feeling a cold dread begin to take hold, a deep confusion clouding my mind. The child's terror was not for some passing stranger, but for me. The mother knelt, pulling her son close, trying to soothe his frantic cries. Her eyes darted between the shaking child and me, searching for an explanation. "What is it, sweetie? What's wrong?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. The boy only buried his face deeper into her shoulder, his small body convulsing with terror. I took a step forward, wanting to help, wanting to understand. But she recoiled slightly, pulling her son closer still. His sobs were loud, raw, filling the afternoon air with a terrible sound. He lifted his head slightly, his tear-streaked face twisting with fear. His eyes, still wide with unadulterated terror, looked directly at me. He pointed a trembling finger again, his voice a choked whisper that struggled through his cries. "He wasn't supposed to survive," he choked out, his words impossibly clear and impossibly real. The world tilted. The warm sun on my skin turned cold. The comforting sounds of the street vanished. His words, innocent yet terrifying, struck me. They echoed in my mind, replaying again and again. He wasn't supposed to survive. Skas gas 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 stress gas 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 stress gas 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 stress gas 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 stress gas stress gas 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 gross gross gas gross 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 gross. What impossible fate had I defied? The question echoed, terrifying and silent. I stood there, shattered and utterly adrift,